And we are the coalition, loud and proud, civilly disobedient media. Right now, we are in the executive offices of the House Minority Leader, the Republican House Minority Leader, Representative Mike Chippendale, Republican District 40, well known to, folks who love liberty. Has consistently advocated for a liberty perspective during his entire legislative career. This year, he was elevated to the position of Minority Leader, and as such, really, while he'll never speak for an individual legislature, clearly he displays the perspective of the Republican House minority here in Rhode Island. First of all, Representative Chippendale, thank you much. Minority Leader Chippendale, thank you much. We understand that you've got literally a couple minutes in between a packed schedule. Despite the fact that the session is really just starting to kick into gear, it's clear that the stakes are going to be high for Rhode Islanders of every background. Earlier this morning, the governor, in conjunction with the entirety of the executive branch, in conjunction with both Senate and Rep, if you will, sponsorship, announced, at least spiritually, the formation of legislation geared at some type of assault weapons ban. What have you seen? My understanding is the legislation hasn't even been formally issued. What have you seen, and what are your initial thoughts?
I've seen nothing this year submitted. Of course, we've seen bills over the years that seek to address whatever an assault weapon happens to be on that particular day as they define it. So I expect more of the same that we've seen over the years. I don't have great expectations for it.
You know, a part of the narrative nationally from Democrats, particularly when they're in the minority, has been the nature of legislation should be collegial, there should be cooperation, everyone should have a seat at the table. As you know, I can go on for hours with cliches. Sure. During this process, in your experience with 2A legislation, has there been any collegiality, collaboration, discussion, input?
No, not at all. No. It's ideologically driven agenda items. It's really all it is. It's headlines. It's the issue du jour for my friends on the other side. If they were interested in making good policy, frankly, they would invite folks like myself to the table, because we have a working, practical, fundamental knowledge and understanding of not just the issue, but of firearms in general, how the laws impact the citizens of the state, where the flaws may be and where the shortcomings may be. So there is no collaboration on that. But what's worse is that we as a state have decided and legislated that the Attorney General's office will provide us with a comprehensive gun crimes report, the purpose of which is to identify trends that coincide with violence perpetrated with firearms, so that we can intelligently legislate to address the root cause, the problem that caused it. The firearm, and it's cliche at this point, is the tool, and we're not addressing the root cause. We're just going after the tool because it's easy political mileage for the left. The Attorney General Gun Crimes Report, the first comprehensive version, we should have in our hands by May or June, and I contend that we should have been operating from that document when we crafted this, or frankly any legislation seeking to address crimes committed with firearms. We're doing things backwards. We're going to get a report that if it's transparent, if it's comprehensive, and if it's honest, I think will demonstrate that whatever an assault weapon is, and again that's up to them to define it, is not the issue. It's just not the issue that we're facing in society. So it's just a very cowardly approach to get some political points, frankly.
A number of your actual constituents, and I'll say a number of your spiritual constituents, pointed out that the audience was packed with red and orange shirts, and not a yellow shirt to be found. No. In fact, there was, by many claim, essentially no public notice of this announcement whatsoever. This has become a theme, if you will, in the State House, I'm sure over the long term, but particularly since the advent of the McKee administration, where he essentially packs the House to get the, all right, that we're kind of used to. But what was astonishing today to me, and I'm of an age, and I've followed politics a long time, as have you. I don't know if I remember so many members elected who spiked the political football, drawing a correlation between the election results and the inevitability of this legislation. Yeah. Without, how, as they say on the net, how do we say, I believe I've got a mandate, without saying, I believe I've got a mandate? Overtly pointing out that election results are the causal factor for this. That brings forward a wide range of emotions. Sure. The most obvious one that I'll ask you to restate, as you've done before so many times, how important are elections, and do elections have consequences?
Oh, of course they do. You know, it's easy to take an issue like this and try to project that it was an important aspect of a successful campaign season, particularly when the ship that we're on is sinking. You might want to say, hey, look, the casino tables are open right now. We got to go deal with the casino tables. We're going to make folks pay attention to something that's not the biggest problem we have. Mm-hmm. That's what's happening here. That's what happened, obviously, when, you know, if they're trying to gem some sort of a causal relationship between this issue and their election success. I just think it's intellectually flawed for them to do that, and rather cowardly.
What is the most, and again, complex question, but just briefly while we've got you, what is the most important issue, in your opinion, facing Rhode Island today?
Education. Education, if we fix education, we fix the majority of our other problems, including firearm violence with firearms. Because if children are educated properly, they grow up to be responsible, respectful adults. Of course, there's always going to be bad apples in society. That happens everywhere. That's why we have police and we have courts. However, if we fix education, we are also addressing homelessness, joblessness, the lack of entrepreneurial endeavors in the state. We will really seek to address the root cause of all of these ills. Mm-hmm. But clearly, we don't see a whole heck of a lot of progress in that area, and that's problematic. The biggest issue for me on this particular piece of legislation is that I know the proponents know that they are in constitutional shaky ground with this. There are states, I think Illinois a few days ago just came down with a ruling banning their assault weapons ban. And Illinois loves nothing better than creating firearms legislation, laws to restrict people's rights. And we've seen that throughout the United States in various court decisions. We know this will be dealt with in the courts. And in fact, this one will not go down like the MAG ban did, which will eventually be reversed in the courts. We know that will happen. Regrettably, the process that was undertaken on that particular bill was not done with the best plan. This one will not fall victim to that same routine. There is a very competent group of individuals who are waiting for this, and if in fact it does pass, once again, the leadership of the General Assembly is going to cost Rhode Island taxpayers millions of dollars litigating something that they know is unconstitutional, and from their own words have stated it's easier to pass this, to pacify the members, and let the courts deal with it, and let the courts straighten it out. That's their approach to legislating when it comes to your civil rights and your natural rights, which this is both.
From your seat as House Minority Leader, will you formally request the Attorney General to, if you will, review and pass constitutional muster this in writing and publish that study?
I mean, I can request that of the Attorney General until I'm blue in the face. I suspect he won't even give a crap. You know, what's going to happen is there will be testimony from that office, from every other office, and it will sound more like polished campaign political speech than actual policy speech. Of course, you know, it'll be couched with some statistics and some terms of dubious origin to make it sound legitimate. But let's make no mistake. This is a move to appease a very vocal element of the political spectrum right now, and it's nothing else. It is nothing else. It will have no practical impact on anyone's life in the state, other than folks who find themselves unknowingly in violation. Which, whenever we pass laws, we find that happens throughout society.
Would you be surprised to know that one of the leaders of the I'm not sure how I'm going to characterize it. One of the opponents to gun freedom in this state gave a significant speech and pointed out, and again, this was the bold manner of this is what kind of caught me by surprise, pointed out that their organization had endorsed every single candidate standing up there. Would that surprise you?
No, of course not. No. With the exception, really, of the Attorney General, and perhaps the governor, the other general officers have nothing to do with firearms control, firearms legislation with crime in general. And I think they were just acting as opportunists by being there.
Interesting. In closing, because you've got an appointment to go to, this is the week when, as we're all been made aware here in the bubble up on Smith Hill, aka Halitosis Hall, a little credit to Rudy Cheeks, when committee participation is announced by the House majority, if you will. Any surprises there? Any happy thoughts about who landed where?
Yeah, I honestly don't know what their playbook holds on that side for chairmanships or memberships. I have some suspicions, but that's all they are. I'll find out in an hour or so.
So it's still out there right now. Where the Academy has not yet delivered the envelope to the podium.
Yeah, correct. So we'll all find out at the same time later, officially.
Where any suspicions where you'll land this time? We expect to see you on Judiciary?
Well, one of the elements of being a House Minority Leader is that I'm an ex officio member of the committee, so I won't have a standing committee assignment per se, but of course there will be committees that have topics of interest to me, in front of which I will appear and or sit as a voting member.
And that was the next question from a parliamentary process. As ex officio, are you able to walk in and vote on that committee?
Absolutely, yes.
And in fact, wasn't that what happened in the Senate with some of the gun legislation? That effectively the fire alarm went out. We're in trouble here. Call in the troops. Anyone who can vote, show up. Yeah,
I think both chambers do the same thing when it comes down to ex officio votes. If it's that close where one side believes an ex officio vote's going to make a difference, certainly the other side's going to try to offset it.
That's excellent. Representative Chippendale, again, squeezing us in between meetings. Very grateful.
My pleasure.
Very grateful for your perspective. This is a process I look forward to continuing all year, so that the coalition can give the minority, if you will, the type of platform that they deserve to express their viewpoint on whatever the issues of the day, not just 2A, but, we've got a budget looming, there's troubling signs in the economy, and that clearly will impact the budget, as well as the fact that we've got significant amounts of money that were given to us by the government that seem, despite all the problems, we've been handed the money, that process is behind us, that ship has sailed, it's still not being spent, incredibly enough. And you've been very provocative, and we'll continue this on later in the week, on issues surrounding homelessness. We've got a negative 5-degree day, and despite, and I'm going to follow up with you, I want to plant a seed here, despite a year-long campaign plus, despite extensive conversations, posturing, sermonizing, whatever, we still don't have places for these people to go.
It's still a crisis by no means. Just because it's not on the front of the State House anymore doesn't mean the crisis went away. Right. It is systemic. It's a three-headed hydra, if you will, that we have to deal with in three separate and distinct ways, but it does have to be dealt with.
3 people have died this year in Woonsocket, directly or indirectly, tied to or exacerbated by weather conditions.
Yeah.
Does that surprise you?
It saddens me greatly. I know that this happens every year. I had family who used to work at the Old Travelers Aid, and those stories would come in every winter, and they're no less heartbreaking than when you learn about them today than when I did 40 years ago.
Thank you very much, Representative.
You're welcome.